Hello! We are going to be getting started pretty soon. I'm just making sure everything is running. Let me share that link. Plop that in Discord. And I think we are good to go. Okay, welcome to the Spellbreak Academy. Today we are going to be learning Conduit. My name is Zen. I am your resident Conduit today. I have been playing this game since 2018. I think it was December. It might have been November. I'm unsure exactly when, but I've been playing since pre-alpha. I have always played like a high mobility class. Like back then I used Frostborn and Tempest, which it gave you this alacrity speed and this jump. So you see it's like high movement classes, but ever since Conduit came out, it has been a transition. So we will get into it. Welcome. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about it. And yeah, so let's talk about some of the things we're going to be talking about. We're going to do the basics, we'll break down a basic explanation of the class Gauntlet, what the lightning does. I mean, you just saw what it does, but I'm going to break it down a little bit more intricacies of that. Suggested use of it, utility, like different spell interactions, a basic explanation of the class skills, like what they do, and then a more detailed one, more that gives you some of that utility, because I uniquely have a good competitive perspective. I've played a lot of Spellbreak tournaments. In fact, I host them, so I can give you, a different perspective than you might get from any other Conduit, because I can tell you how it fares against the best players, like in the most extreme of situations. I have a little experience there, so I think that'll be interesting. I'll also talk about your win conditions against the other 6 classes. So if you're a Conduit fighting Pyromancer, no longer will you be scared of that hard W key. You will know what to do. And yeah, at the end of this lesson, you will be able to do that. Some nice rune swapping. So yeah, let's get right into it. What was that? He just dashed and teleported. Yes, I did. We will get into that. Okay. So let's start from the top. A basic explanation of the class Gauntlet. So the Lightning Gauntlet basic spell is called the Lightning Bolt. This is a very fast projectile, as you can see, and it deals 6 to 12 damage per bolt, and this depends on the rarity and range. So if I had a common gauntlet, I'd be doing 6 damage at the farthest range, because this gauntlet does have damage fall off. The closer you are to them, the more damage it does. If you're farther away, it obviously does less. So the least damage it can do is 6. You just have to believe me, because I can't switch back to common. But the min damage on a legendary lightning is 9, and then it's all the way to 12 close range. Yeah. And then that is even less if it's a common. So there's also increased bloom while firing in the air and while moving. So if I'm trying to shoot him like this, there's going to be a little more bloom than if I was just standing still. It's kind of hard to show on a stationary target, but yes, there is bloom there, and also when you're moving. Actually, you can see my crosshair getting shifting in size. Let me actually make that a little bigger so you can tell. You can watch my my crosshair shifting as I'm moving around, as I'm shooting, and yeah. Okay, so that's the lightning spell, and let's talk about the sorcery. That's gonna be your lightning strike. So it can be held to aim, as you can see. It has a very excellent range, but basically when I let this circle go, there is going to be a fantastic lightning strike, a beautiful display of electric power. So you see there's 4 right now. There's actually a class skill that I will get into. If you're using any other class, or if you are just level 1 Conduit, you just got in the game, there would only be 1 lightning strike. Okay. So yeah, this ability has a 15-second cooldown. It has 12 only because I have Spellslinger talent, which reduces it, and we'll get into that more. But yeah, 15-second cooldown traditionally on this sorcery. It deals 20 damage per strike, as you can see, and it stuns them. So what that means is your opponent isn't able to cast runes or spells for the entire duration of that stun. Let me see if I can stun myself, actually. Yeah, so I'm stunned. So as you can see, I'm shocked, and I couldn't cast spells. I was clicking M1 that entire duration of the shock, but it wouldn't let me. See, I'm sure you can hear me clicking. It doesn't work. Yep. So what you can, that's one of the greatest things about Conduit, that stun. You can really capitalize on that to get some damage, to position out. There's tons of things you can do. It's very free and it's great. So this that sorcery is going to definitely get you that guaranteed stun most of the time. Now, if an opponent has Harmony, that's something else to consider. Harmony is a talent that gives you immunity to those stuns. But yeah, Lightning Sorcery is auto aim, so I don't need to aim this. If they were here, they would get hit. If they were here, they would get hit. As long as they're in this circle, they are getting hit, even if they are way in the sky. As a matter of fact, if I placed it here and they were in the sky above me, they would get hit because the Lightning Sorcery targets whoever is highest and in the circle. Fun fact. Okay. It's also an AoE effect, so it can hit multiple targets at once if they are right next to each other. Not a lot of people know that. That just hit both of us. It's not just auto aim and it picks one target. It's auto aim and it's AoE. So it is an excellent sorcery. Yeah, so let's break down a little bit more some suggested uses of those two spells that I just showed you, that Lightning Bolt and that Lightning Strike. So suggested use of the Lightning Bolt, let's get into that. So lightning is the fastest projectile in the game. On Conduit and any other class, it's essentially your free chip damage anti-air gauntlet. You can use it for free line of sight damage on anyone within a viable range. And let me actually show you that viable range. I actually have a video. Let's see. Optimal range. Here we go. So, as you can see, this is me showing you that damage fall off. As you can see, when I'm very close to them, I'm doing 12 damage. I'm going to back up. So, right there, it's a little less. It's 11 now. I keep backing up. Still 11. There we go. 10. So, as you can see, the farther we get away, the less damage it does. And then this is the minimum damage. And as a matter of fact, this is around the viable range. So lightning might try to confuse you. You might think, oh, it does more damage close range. I want to be closer range. Absolutely not. You want to hold that distance so that you can do damage to them while they can't do damage to you. If this opponent had a wind gauntlet and a fire gauntlet, they can't really do as much damage to me as I am to them as long as I hold this range. This is why I say that a viable lightning range is around here, at the minimum damage, ironically. Yep. So it's around there. Yes. So it's usually, yeah, it's definitely not the best idea to use lightning close range, as other gauntlets can out DPS you. If I were sitting here doing this, it's like, yeah, that's a lot of damage, but they could just do this and it also burns me, and they can weave movement into that, while lightning, you're stuck damage trading. Like, yes, I can dash in the middle of it, but I can't weave bolts in between my dashes. Like, they can weave fireballs in between their dashes, you know? So you're not really going to be sitting there damage trading close range with lightning, or you shouldn't be. Let's see. So you remember I said on any other class, on lightning and any other class, lightning is essentially your free chip damage. Let's talk about the difference between Conduit and other classes. So the difference is, on Conduit, lightning just does way too much damage. We'll get into more specifics on that damage part and why it's like that when we talk about class skills, but This extra damage allows Conduit Lightning to differ in optimal use from other classes. Other classes need to kite much more with the Gauntlet. You'll get some chip damage, and then you'll get some more chip damage, and then your opponent is close now, so you need to use Fireball, and then maybe you get a reposition, you're able to get away, you get more chip damage. You can't main the DPS on other classes as easily. Not at all, in my opinion. You can't. But Conduit can. It just does way too much damage. You can just go Sentry and even face tank some damage in some situations. Really, the biggest thing is if you have more HP than them and you're holding that distance, you pretty much win. As long as you're hitting your shots, it's really that simple. This is the fastest gauntlet in the game, and it's very easy to punish people. If you have more health than them, in a lot of situations, you kind of just auto win as long as you hold that distance. And yeah, and because of this and tying it all together, you wouldn't be able to do that without that extra damage. Before Conduit was able to do all this damage, they used to have to kite much more, used to have to move much more, and use that secondary gauntlet much more. But yeah, optimal use of Lightning Bolt is a little different on Conduit for that reason. Yeah, so also the biggest thing for optimal use of Lightning Bolt is obviously, I should have said this first, is obviously high ground and open plains. So if I'm fighting someone and, you know, they're using fire and I'm using lightning, I obviously don't want to fight them here because it's like, okay, they can just go around this corner and then I have to use lightning again, and it's I want to just sit there and beam them. So obviously it would be better to bait that player. If they were over here, it'd be better to bait them out here, and now I can beam them for free and get continued bolts. So obviously open plains is great with the nature of the gauntlet, but also high ground. So you just get different angles with high ground that you wouldn't previously have. So like, for example, right now I can shoot down here, but if I were here, you see what I'm saying? I would need to like, and then I'm just closer to the opponent. So that's assuming that the opponent is right here, right? And they were like trying to shoot at me. This is much different because if I'm standing, being on the low ground is much different because if I'm standing up here, beaming them, I can just back up for free. They don't necessarily have that luxury. Like, where are they gonna go in a position where I can't hit them? It doesn't really exist, especially with this lightning sorcery going around corners. So having that high ground is great for just an angle's sake. You always have the preferable angle over your opponent. And yeah, I'll show a little video demonstrating that a bit. Let's see. Open plains abuse. So I'm also going to show this for my Conduit matchup later, but this is also a great video for open plains abuse. So you see I was running the TP Conduit. He salutes, but I'll get him back. I'll get him back. So let's see. So I dropped down here, and this was great because in this Clash game there were so many conduits. So you'll be able to see some real open plains abuse. So I get all this free damage. I just lead the fight with a bunch of free damage because, first of all, he doesn't see me. I have Fervor, which boosts my attack speed. I have Focus Mana, so I'm doing a bunch of damage. And I have Teleport, and I'm in open plains, so I can reposition wherever I want. So I just lead this fight with some free beams. He's completely unaware of me. You know, that cloud goes up, breaking my line of sight, so I try to go behind him. I teleport for absolutely free. I didn't have to worry. There was no wall there. I could just go there. Beam this guy. Let's pretend I didn't miss all those. Let's just assume those hit. Just to show you like the potential. Like I could have done like 60 damage just then if I had hit all those. So the potential is there. I'm good at abusing the Conduit kit, but I don't have the best aim. So my hope is that you see this and you have better aim than me, and you could be a way better Conduit than me. Yeah. So abuse these open plains. You see, I just got all that free damage. That could have been up to 60. But look at this player abusing the open plains versus me. That's why I love it, because it's not just me in this clip abusing open plains. You can really see it because I get beamed. So look at my HP. I have 60. I have full shield, right? Nah, I just don't have full shield because he's Conduit in open plains. Look at my health now. Okay, so I teleport on him and I clean it up with some fire, but that shows that is some open plains abuse. You see there's no walls and you're a Conduit, they are gonna take damage. There's nothing else to say about it. It is insane. So yeah, that is the optimal use of the lightning bolt in my opinion. So let's talk more about some utility for the lightning bolt. So there's stunning. You can actually do stuns with the lightning bolt, but you need to interact with other spells. So for example, if you are fighting a Frostborn and you just beat them, so they need to run away, nope, they can't run away because you just stunned their Alacrity Trail. They can't use their rune anymore, so you can just beam them for free. So that's pretty great. Also, if you're fighting a Toxicologist and he's like going for corrosion mid-range, if your lightning interacts with this toxic spray mid-air, like that spray, if that gets hit with a lightning bolt while it's coming at you, and it's gonna form a puddle at your feet. So like, let's say your opponent was this guy and he's spraying toxic at me, right? So it looks something like this, right? Like he's spraying it at me, and then I spray lightning at him, and then those spells connect mid-air. When his spell lands, it's gonna be electrified tox puddle, which is going to electrocute you. So that is one thing that you're gonna wanna like look out for. Always have high ground versus those Toxicologists because they will stun you. Yeah, that's utility and important interaction. Also, be aware of the tornado. So the thing about this tornado is that it blocks a lot of projectiles, and uniquely with lightning, it blocks, I feel like, way more than it should. So it's supposed to be, the first lightning bolt absorbs, the first lightning bolt that you send, the tornado absorbs it, and then it becomes a lightning tornado, right? And then all the other lightning is supposed to go through, I believe, but it just doesn't. It gets absolutely eaten by the nado. So as you can see, none of that lightning is hitting the mountain. It was all getting ate by that nado. So you're gonna want to watch out for tornadoes there. But yeah. So that is some spell utility use. So are there any questions? Let's see if there's any questions in the chat. Okay, I think we're good. Everything's been pretty straightforward so far. Okay. Oh, I'm gonna give him some time to type some stuff. Okay. Looks like Tacos is typing something. After we talk about utility, we're gonna get more into sorcery utility. Pretty sure it's intended. Okay. Tacos says that he thinks the nado's supposed to block all the lightning. Probably. That's just one thing that has always caught me off guard. Okay, so we're just getting some clarification on that. There's no questions. Cool. Fairly, so Thunderstance give me some, it's, yeah, it blocks wind and lightning, fairly recent change. So it is supposed to be like that. That's cool. So that gives Tempest a more favorable matchup. Or not more favorable, but more of a chance in the unfavorable matchup. Yeah, so that's kind of cool. So let's talk about the sorcery and some utility for that. So obviously the most immediate utility is it's absolutely free damage. You're not gonna miss this. If someone is standing here and you're above them, you can still hit them. It's just free damage. So there's utility there. There's no way I could possibly miss that. Also, the stun, obviously, it gives you an opening to do a bunch of things. You can stun someone into free damage. The stun lasts long enough to get 3 toxic slaps off, or yeah, 3 toxic slaps off. They were stunned that whole time. Or you can stun into a big beam, or you can stun into a reposition. Stun just gives you time to do what you need to do. It lasts, I think it's 1 second. Yeah, 1 point whatever. I think that was 2 seconds. That is enough time to get a potion off if you have thirsty. So there's things to consider. It gives you an opening. So there's definitely utility with that stun. Insta stun, Toxic Cloud. Oh right. So here's something else. another little tech with the sorcery is you can throw a toxic cloud through the sorcery and it will automatically be stunned, which is kind of cool. It's not very viable, but okay, I don't know why that didn't work, but it should have been like that. So let's just pretend that that's what happened. Yeah, when you throw a toxic cloud through the lightning sorcery, it should be electrocuted. Okay, it's just not, but let's just pretend it is. Okay. Let's see. Pre-ignites poison cloud. I'm just trying to make sense of my notes here. Okay, let me show you this video. So here's something that you need to be wary of when using this lightning sorcery. It really gets stuck on various structures. So as you can see, it's all the way up there. So let's say that my So let's say my opponent is down here, right? And I'm trying to stun them. So if they're down there, I can look down and aim my sorcery, but I could actually, as you just saw, the sorcery was up there and I'm still looking down. So you need to be careful when you're aiming your sorcery. Sometimes it will just appear in the wrong place, and this is based on various elevations. It depends on where you are on the map, but you really need to be sure, because if that circle is not underneath them, they will not be hit by it. So as you can see, I barely moved my mouse, but that small mouse movement made it go all the way from down here all the way to up here. So you need to watch out for that. It can cost you your life, because you know that stun really matters sometimes. So yeah, be wary of that, and also be aware of this little tech. You can hit people around corners. So I'm gonna use this video again when I show you Conduit versus Tempest. It's a little sad. He had no chance because I'm Conduit, but let's see. Yep, he's around this corner, and you know what? I decided I'm not gonna push him. I'm just gonna shoot him around the corner because I have lightning sorcery. Yep, so as you can see, he was behind that tree, and I knew that, so I just lightning strike the tree. And he's dead. I will show you the conclusion to this fight when we watch it later. I win, but I'll show you the conclusion later. Okay. Just to make it a little more exciting. Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of tech that you can do with the lightning sorcery. So let's talk more, or let's get into the skills. This is where it starts to get interesting. Not just yet, but the second skill. But I love the skills of Conduit. Okay, let's do it. So there are 4 skills for the Conduit, or for every class. So basically, when you drop into the game, you start with the first skill. When you get into the second zone, you get your second skill, so on and so forth, until you get the last one. But first skill. Potential energy. So on lightning bolt cast, you get +1 damage for every single bolt you send out until you stop casting. This is a maximum of a +5 buff. So I do 12 damage, except I do 13 damage, except I do 14 damage. You see, every single lightning bolt, it goes up by 1. This is absolutely broken. This is absolutely broken. This is a damage mod on a nearly hit scan gauntlet, and it makes for some disgusting moments, some disgusting exiles, I mean, you'll see some of it in my clips, but it is very powerful, and it makes Conduit the best class in the game. I will argue with anyone who tries to make any other claim there. It really pushes Conduit over the top. Potential energy. It is ridiculous. There's not much to say, but there is so much to say at the same time. It is ridiculous. It does a lot of damage, and it's great. Or maybe it's not great, depending on who you are. So yeah. So that's one. Let's see. So suggested. Let's say the suggested. Oh no. I'll give a basic explanation of each skill, and then I will go into suggested use of it. just to keep it a little more structured. So let's talk about overload. When you strike your lightning, you get 1 rune charge. Simple enough. So you see I have 1 teleport, or how about this? You see I have no teleports, right? I'm clicking rune, skill not available yet, except it just is because I have lightning sorcery. You see, I struck my lightning and then I got an instant teleport charge. It's great, it's fantastic. There are great uses for that, which I will get into later. So third skill, when you strike your lightning sorcery, you get minus 100% spell mana cost for 4 seconds. So all that means is for 4 seconds, you have infinite mana. So this is great because it's not just on the lightning spell. You can do this into some tox slaps, but just to show you some real conduit abuse, I'll show you it with lightning. You get so much use out of this lightning spell with it that it's kind of weird to use your offhand with power surge. But yeah, I strike my lightning and then I get 4 seconds of infinite mana, and here's what that looks like. Yeah, it's kind of disgusting. It's kind of good, kind of situational, but I'll get more into. I don't want to like tell you my opinions about it. I'm just telling you what it does for now. When I get into the tactical use and stuff, I'll give you my opinions on like how to use it and stuff. So yeah, secondary strike. This is the last skill. I've had this on the entire time, unfortunately, but or not unfortunately, but yeah, I've had this on the entire time. But basically, your lightning is only supposed to strike 1 time, but when you have this skill, it strikes an additional 4 times. Yep. So it would have just done 1, but it did 5 because I have this skill. So this is very, very strong. And I will talk about why when we get into the suggested use of the skills. So let's start with potential energy. How should you be using this? Well, basically, you need to be sure to keep as much distance, similar to what I was saying with, use of the lightning bolt. You need to keep as much distance as you can between you and your enemy. When in doubt, teleport is your friend. If you're a brand new player, you should really just be using teleport conduit, in my opinion, because you can just hold distance and they can't do anything about it because you just have more runes than them. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just use teleport conduit. Yeah, you really want to hold distance when you're using potential energy because obviously if you stop shooting, if they get close to you, you're probably going to stop to rune. But if you stop, you reset your damage buff, remember? Because it's +1 for every bolt you cast. So that's something to keep in mind. You want to have distance the entire time, maybe be holding S so that you don't need to stop. Because the second you stop, you give them the potential to to do more damage to you than you are to them. Yeah, so hold that distance. High ground abuse, like I was saying before, you get that optimal angle. Yeah. Also, if you have a significant health advantage, so it's very difficult for me to say this during a class because I'm supposed to be teaching you like the smartest way to play, but Conduit does so much damage that sometimes you can just eat damage and sometimes you can literally just stand still and damage trade. Don't do that, but it's just something to consider for when I'm telling you the optimal use of potential energy. It's technically something that is there. You can technically be a sentry, and if you have more health than them, you're gonna do more damage to them than they are to you. So that's something that you might want to consider. Like just stand there and kill and finish the kill. I don't know. Maybe don't do that. What you really want to do is I don't recommend ever trying that for a while. You need to learn your movement first because Conduit gets so many runic charges that I feel like mastering that first is definitely great. So here's a question: would you say it's optimal to try to make people chase you, keeping that distance for potential energy? Yes, 100%. It is great. If someone is chasing you, you can just bait them right into the plains. That is a great point. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, you can bring people into favorable positions. Obviously, if you're chasing someone and they're running into a castle, maybe bait them out of that castle. You don't want to be fighting people in unpreferable terrains, and it honestly isn't hard to get people to chase you as Conduit. Just hit them once and start teleporting. They will get so triggered and they will just chase you. Yeah, that's great. Shout out tacos. That was a good point. Definitely bait people. Not sure if you're going to cover eventually, but what's your reasoning for Tox offhand versus fire? Or is that just your preference? I am going to get into it, and I prefer fire, but I will get into that. I always say I can't break it down too much because I literally have a whole section where I talk about offhand gauntlets for Conduit, but I prefer fire, and I will get more into it soon. So in the end zone, you were supposed to just press Q and spam on the enemies. Well, yes. So like yes and no. Like really, what you want to be doing is having the enemies fight each other. What I like to do for end circle as Conduit, and I will do a little basic explanation because I didn't go into this how to play end games in the actual lesson. So when I'm Conduit end game, I really want to have Shadow Step because really what you can do is just abuse the fact that you get this sorcery back every 15 seconds, and that is going to be melting everyone in the final circle. You saw how big the circle is, so how big the sorcery is, right? Like this is a gigantic circle. So when you're in the final circle of the match, when you're in the final zone, this is a significant percentage of the size of the map. So yeah, you can kind of just place this in positions where it's like in front of you so that you corner off this part of the zone. This part of the zone is mine. I'm able to zone this off. Yeah, you just do damage to them and you get your Shadow Step charges. So really, I like to Shadow Step up and like just let them fight each other. Really. And I try to save your rune charges. Use them to dodge. I don't like to go aggressive end circle because you have those pyromancers. They're just going to be, they have more output than you. You don't try to 1v1 these pyromancers. Let everyone fight each other. Stay invisible. Spam your AoE. You don't need to do anything else. Just live as long as possible and get that 15-second cooldown back. Obviously, weave your fireballs into it. Weave your toxic. But try to stay out of the fight, in my opinion. Let them fight each other. Yeah. And that is just my quick thought on the matter. What I do final circle. So, back to... Oh, another question. How do you cancel spellcast? I'm not sure. So literally, I have Q, and then I just right click. I press E, I right click. E, left click. So just... Oh, so I'm pressing sorcery button, and then I'm pressing my primary attack button. So for me, sorcery's on Q, and then to shoot lightning is M1, so I click Q, and then M1 to cancel. My Toxic Cloud's on E, so I click Toxic Cloud, and then I shoot, and that cancels it. So basically, aim your sorcery, and then click any of your shoot buttons, and that will cancel it. Yup. So, I think... Yes, so I was talking about suggested uses of skills. So, back to that. Let's get into Overload. I talked about potential energy. Let's get into Overload. This is when it gets interesting. Okay. Why does it get interesting, you might be asking? Well, I would show you, but I don't have the rune. So, you remember how you cast sorcery and you get a rune charge, right? Well, if you have a rune in your pocket and you have a lightning sorcery charged, this rune is charged. So if I switch to teleport and I lightning strike, I instantly have a teleport charge. But I just had Shadow Step charge 2 seconds ago. Yes, you can have multiple runes. You can rune swap in a fight. So if I am Shadow Stepping around and I'm fighting someone, if we're fighting right now, and I'm losing the fight, like Shadow Step, Toxic Cloud. Oh no, I took too much damage. Okay, goodbye, I'm gone. And I just teleported across the map. Conduit can just play this game differently from everyone else because of this. Rune swap, in my opinion, is the strongest mechanic in the game, and Conduit doesn't need potential energy because it has rune swap. Having both of these is ridiculous, but I don't... Just to get in my opinion real quick, I don't like potential energy for the class, but that's not what this is about. Yeah, so that's what you can do with Overload. That's one thing you could do with Overload. So you get that rune swap going, which is fantastic, very, very fun. Yeah, there's a bunch of questions. I think I'm gonna do questions after I finish suggested uses of skills. So yeah, Overload. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit more. So some rune swaps that I like to do are, you know, combat rune into a travel rune. So, you know, you're fighting and then you're losing, so you teleport away. Like, that is always fantastic. It's insane. It's always going to be good. There's other things that you can do though. You can use a utility rune like Invis. You can use Shadow Step and then have Invis swap. So you're fighting with Shadow Step and then your teammate gets downed. So you switch to Invis real quick and resurrect him while you're invisible. Or you could be, I don't know. You could just be in trios and you are on your team and you need eyes. Like there's someone in this other castle, but you don't know quite where, so you can just give eyes to your teammates, you know? It's great. And then you switch back to Shadow Step for the actual fight. Like, there's so much viability to actually all of these runes. And there's so many situations where all of them shine, but not alone. Like, a lot of these runes are only good in conjunction with a combat rune, because a lot of the time you can't rationalize not using dash on other classes. So you don't see Featherfall or Wolf or Chronomaster or Invis seeing much usage in like high level play. But with Conduit, it's you can try these things because you can also use that dash rune. And just real quick to brush into it, dash is fantastic because you're just able to dash. You're able to dodge more shots than, say, a fireball, a flight user. This flight user can only fly once every 11 seconds, so they're really only going to use their rune to run away. Where dash is much more versatile. That's why it's better. But again, that's not what this is about. I just like to give as much information as possible while I am on the tangent. So, yeah. So, Overload can also be very simple. You can use it to get that extra dash you need to clear that gap. So like right now. Oh no, I'm not gonna make it, except I am, because I have another charge. That was a bad example because it shot me off the edge, but hopefully that was hopefully you understood what I was trying to do there. Basically, it gives you that extra charge that you need to clear a distance sometimes. So let's try to go from here to here. See, because of my overload, I was able to do that. So that's kind of cool. So there's a little tech there with the overload. Let's see. Went out of the fight. Oh, right. When you're out of a fight, I always recommend, as a conduit, you need to be overcharging your runes. So what that means is, you know, just cast overload and then wait for your sorcery to come back. Conduit, uniquely from other classes, has 3 rune charges base. That is without having any talents. So there's a talent that gives you an additional rune charge, but Conduit has 3 rune charges base. What do you mean? I only have 2. Well, you have 2 and you have your lightning sorcery again. So 1, 2, 3. And that is only possible when you overcharge. So when you're not in a fight, I recommend that everyone using Conduit just strike that lightning. Get your sorcery to start charging up again, because that is the only way that you get that 3 rune charge advantage, which is impeccable. On top of everything else, on top of potential energy and the rune swap, you also just have 3 rune charges base. It's insane. It's insane. Strongest class. Let's see. It was strong before the damage mod. Okay. So let's see if we can get into Power Surge. So this is, it's pretty simple enough. This skill has beautiful synergy with the focused mana talent. Now I don't have it right now, but I will actually just grab it. So let's see. Focus Mana is a talent where if you have full mana, with at least 80% mana, you get a spell damage increase. Now, if you remember, Power Surge gives you infinite mana. So what does that mean? Well, what do you think it means? You get that damage buff for the entire duration of Power Surge. It is kind of good. It is kind of good. So let's see what that looks like. Yep, I have Power Surge, so strike my lightning. Whoa, okay. So you saw that doing 19 damage. Now, this is the minimal example. I didn't even have an amulet, so I had like half the amount of lightning bolts I could cast. I'm only at level 1 focus mana, so this could be 30%, and I could have reckless, another 25%, so it can get crazy. I think the most damage is 25 or 24 that you can do per lightning bolt. That is broken. That is broken. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So yeah, you can use this skill with focus mana. That's one usage of it. You can also really use it to daze your opponents. You can confuse them. They might peek you. Like let's say this guy's Conduit, right? And he starts beaming me. So I'm like, okay, he's only gonna beam for like 3 seconds. So he starts beaming. It's been 2 seconds, and you know what? I'm gonna walk out on the 3rd second because I don't care. I'll eat a little damage, but I'm gonna kill him. Except he has an additional 6 seconds of beam that I didn't consider because he has Power Surge. So it can really catch you off guard because you don't expect the beam to be that long. So you walk out earlier. You see what I'm saying? I can beam for so long, and that alone can just confuse people and into giving you free damage. I can tell you now, I have gotten killed because I anticipated someone. I have gotten exiled, rather. Anticipating someone to run out of mana, and they didn't. So that can daze people. So yeah, that's another utility. So for secondary strike, just to wrap up the suggested use of the skills. So secondary strike, the last one. So this gigantic circle is excellent for just zoning a location. So this circle says, okay, yeah, for 4 seconds, you just can't walk here or you just die. That is great. In a battle royale where positioning is king, where you're always trying to get a position, you could just cancel someone's position. It's just like, hey, yeah, just stop standing there. I want that position. Or, hey, final circle, yeah, just don't come on this half of the final circle. You guys fight over there, I'll stay over here. Like, it's great. You have control of the field for a considerable amount of time. For the other stuff that it's giving you, the fact that it's also giving you a rune charge and infinite mana, and it can stun them, and it does 80 damage, it's very powerful. It's very good. Yeah. So I think that is good. Are there any questions on skills? I know there were questions from before, so let me read those. Do you guys have any questions on skills, though? So he said, since Conduit has so much CC, would Harmony be a viable talent to use since you can shock yourself? So I'm going to go into this when I talk about talents, but off top, I'm going to tell you maybe. The thing is, on Conduit, you really want to use Focus Mana, you really want to use Spell Slinger, you really want to use Runic Fluency. So Harmony is just kind of a boring pick, and it's not as abusable as the other things. Also, so I'm saying all these words and a lot of you don't know what any of these skills are. So I just listed 3 mind scroll talents. So talents are divided into mind, body, and spirit. And what Taco was just referring to was a mind scroll called Harmony that makes you immune to that stun. So he said, hey, should Conduit run these? And my answer to that is no. Honestly, just don't get stunned, forehead. I know how stupid. I know. Just don't get stunned. Sometimes you just can't control it. Sometimes there's just a cloud. But there are just better mind scrolls that Conduit better abuses. than harmony. So it's better to learn to just not get stunned and abuse those other talents, which I will get into. Should you use for yes, you should. I don't wanna get it was another talent question. We literally have a whole section about talents that is I will get into right after we talk about the matchups. So after I answer these final questions, I'm gonna get into, you know, Conduit versus Pyro, Conduit versus Frostborn, tell you what you should be doing there, and a video showing it. And then right after I do that for all 6 classes, I will tell you my preferred talents, my preferred builds, and offhand gauntlets and stuff like that. Any spicy plays on offhand when using Power Surge as opposed to bolts? Don't really think it's spicy. It's just damage. It's not yeah. You see, you can do Power Surge with your offhand. I wouldn't say there's nothing that I came up with. Maybe it'll come to me as I'm explaining something else later, but no, not really. Power Surge is it's very straightforward, similar to Potential Energy. Just don't get stunned. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that is okay. So let's get into the overall class play style and win condition. So kind of like I said before, something that will be reoccurring in a lot of these matchups is your overall play style with Conduit, which is, you know, hold that distance, stay as far away as possible, have open field, have high ground, and just beam them. So a lot of the matchups will come down to those fundamentals because that is the preferred play style. So just before we get into that, we have one more question. It looks like, what ways do you try to maximize getting all of your additional strikes onto an opponent? I find myself only hitting them once, even with good predictions. So that's the thing. A lot of the times it can be like they just happen to sidestep. It's to maximize it. I honestly don't try to maximize it. That's to give you a half answer. I don't. I really just try to get that one stun on them because it feels kind of RNG in a sense, like where they're gonna walk, because they could just change directions. But one thing that you could do is, I guess, if there's a lot of enemies around you, place it in between the enemies, because a lot of in their panic, this is a 1v1v1 situation that we're talking about. So there's multiple enemies in front of me and we're all fighting each other. So I'll just place it right in between them because that has a chance to hit both of them. So that's one way you can maximize your damage, just placing it near multiple enemies. You know, maximizing it final circle is relatively simple. You just kind of place it in the center of the circle, as opposed to like any of the corners. Place it in the center of the circle because everyone will kind of, as they're dashing and everything, they don't have that much control. They are going to get in the middle of the circle eventually. So that's one way to maximize it. Final circle, don't necessarily aim it at anyone in the final circle. Just place it right in the middle. It will hit someone. More about the stun and less about the additional damage. Exactly, because you're going to stun them into some potential energy. Yeah. So it's more about getting that stun off and getting that rune overload. So like that's what's great about Conduit. Even if you miss that sorcery, you still get value because you get that infinite mana, you get that rune, and you also assert some dominance. They're a little scared by the lightning bolts, you know. Yeah, so it's good. So yeah, that's one way to optimize it. Yeah, just place it in the middle of the circle maybe. But yeah, so let's get into those matchups. So let's start with Pyro. So Pyromancer is all about the W key. They are going to hold W and spam fire. That's pretty much it. That's all they're going to do. So what do you do to counter that? Well, if they're going to hold W, why don't you just hold S? You need to hold distance. A lot of the times, a Pyromancer will literally walk into your sorcery. So a lot of the times I hold S and I let them walk into my sorcery, and I will show you just that in a second. Though let's break it down. I think there's a few more. Yeah. So try to have high ground and distance. Obviously, their combust requires high or at least even ground. You know, for them to be able to abuse that explosion radius, they need to be on a favorable position. So if you have that high ground on them, they are not going to be able to combust you. Let's pretend I landed up there. They're not going to be able to combust you. Like, this is not. I mean, they can, but if this was a high ground where it was like, okay, I stand there and then there's like a floor, you know what I mean? I'd be able to just back up. But generally, when you're standing on high ground, they won't be able to combust you. So that's kind of great. Let's see. Yeah, and you get free position to beam them. Obviously, we talked about optimal use of lightning bolts, and yes, I will get into that video in just a second. Just going over the final pyro. Yeah, so if they're close when the fight starts, you're not doing too hot. Pun intended, by the way. That was kind of bad though. Consider rune swapping for a fight reset. Or capitalize on your stun and then rune to high ground. So I know, run away. I don't want to run away. But the reason fight reset is even an option is because Conduit should be doing 60 damage to Pyro before Pyro sees them. If they don't, it's kind of feels bad. Pyro just kind of wins because they can just hold W. And there's not much you could do. So what you need to do in that situation, if they're already close to you, is, you know, like those two things I just mentioned. Maybe rune swap, maybe reset the fight, and re-engage on them. Thank you, Andrew. Good pun. Yeah, re-engage on them when you have the favorable position, when you see them first, when you have the high ground. So yeah, maybe rune swap, maybe get away, or maybe rely on that stun. Maybe stun them into some damage. So yeah, those are pretty much your two win conditions there. If all else fails, this is why I originally told you when I was telling you about fighting, when I was saying, you know, you can damage trade, I was saying, you know, maybe don't do that, maybe master the movement first, because you have all these runes. If it comes down to it, if they're close to you, just dash fight them, just out fireball dash them. You can do it, I know you can. You can master fireball dash work. I think even better than a pyromancer can, because fireball dash work, what am I talking about? I'm just talking about maneuvering around your opponent, outplaying them with your dashes compared to theirs, and hitting more fireballs than they are hitting you with. So like most competitive fights break down to like some good dash work and some fireballs. So I believe in you as a conduit. If they break gap and you can't rune swap and you missed your stun, it comes down to that dash fireball 1v1, and you just have more dashes than them, don't you? Yes. So abuse them. Get that dash work down, master that dash movement. Not that I have mastered it, but yeah. And that is your general win conditions versus Pyro. So let's show you some a little video, me versus Pyro. Let's see, versus Pyro. So this video will be showing off that stun. This Pyromancer walks directly into my stun, just like I was saying. So I was running that max damage build, so you'll be able to see some nice damage numbers too. So let's break it down. It's not this guy, by the way. So this guy dies. That's great, that's great. So here's the Pyromancer in question. He spring steps to lead the fight. That was a waste of a spring step, by the way. No one was shooting at him. But okay. So I see that he's no shield, thankfully. But he's still pushing me because it's Clash, you know. So he's Pyromancer, so he's just holding W right into my sorcery, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, if they're walking right at you, maybe just stun them. Yeah, so that's one way that you can beat Pyro. And yeah, I mentioned the other ways, you know. Rune swap, get a different position, restart the fight, and then if it comes down to it, get that dash work in, just outrune them. But yeah, so that is versus Pyro. So let's talk about the Toxicologist matchup. Now, this is one that I hold dear to me, this matchup. Which is kind of weird because why do I hold it dear to me? Something that is so such a terrible experience for me. So let me explain. Back when Conduit first came out, and Toxicologist first came out, that was patch 30. They were both brand new classes, so everyone considered, and it was, Toxicologist, best class in the game, easily. And then Conduit was, it was okay, it was there, and it could compete. It had some counterplay, but it was very, very hard. So I had to learn these techs the hard way, fighting the best Toxicologists in the game, and just getting absolutely obliterated because they can just, their Toxic Slaps just do 100 damage, and they have 4 chances to outbreak you, maybe 5 depending on the items that they have. It was very strong. So I say all that to say, I learned these techs in the most extreme situations, so they are tried and true. So the first advice that I will give you as a Conduit versus Toxicologist, or just in general, but specifically versus Toxicologist, is have a Fire Gauntlet. This gauntlet is insane on Conduit in general, but versus this Toxicologist matchup, it is critical, it is imperative. You will probably just lose if you don't have this. If they are very good at the game, you will probably just lose. I'm kidding, you have counterplay, but it makes it a lot easier. So, fire. So why is it so good? Well, basically, you're gonna abuse this firewall. So Toxicologists, what they're gonna try to do is, vanishing mist themselves into the toxic spray, but firewall does block toxic spray, as I probably should be showing you. Let's see. Overload usage there, by the way. That was kind of clean. Oh, good thing I don't have Spell Slinger. Okay. So yeah, so toxic spray is blocked by the firewall, so they can't outbreak you through that, as well as they can't snipe through it. So the most common, at least in competitive, the most common offhand on Toxicologist is Frost. So Firewall blocks both of those, which is fantastic. So one thing that you're going to want to watch out for when using Firewall versus Toxicologist is the fact that they will throw their cloud at you. So let's see if I can get this charged. Oh, it just won't charge fast enough. Never mind. But if I threw a Toxic Cloud right now, this firewall would explode, and then it would dissipate, and there would only be a few segments left of the firewall. So what you can do in that situation is just shoot your fire back and just replace the firewall in the segments that were broken by the DF, and you can hold at distance. But really, the biggest thing that you need to be doing versus Toxicologists when you have this firewall up is just shoot them forehead. One of the greatest things about Firewall and Lightning is this combination, or the lack thereof combination, but it is the greatest thing. You can shoot lightning through fire. This alone was what made Conduit able to deal with Toxicologists way back then, when it was very one-sided. We were able to beam through this firewall, and we're able to beam through this firewall, which they seemingly have zero counterplay to. I mean, this lasts 15 seconds. So if it's final circle, they're not going to be able to, vanishing mist themselves very easily because there's fire everywhere. They can't shoot through it with either of their primaries. They throw their cloud at you, sure, but now they don't have a cloud. Now they can't vanishing mist themselves. They're throwing their mobility at you. So it's, yes. So to bring it back to where we started this, in the Toxicologist versus Conduit matchup, I recommend using fire. You should be using fire anyways, not just for Toxicologists, but it is imperative. Yeah, you can burn their cloud, so if they cloud themselves and you weren't able to stop it, just burn that cloud to deny the reuse. They can't hop back in that cloud to Vanishing Mist again, because you exploded it. So yeah, that is that. So that's with the fire offhand. So let's talk about a few different options. What if you have wind offhand? Well, what is great about wind offhand is if you are fighting Toxicologists and you're just wind spamming them and they try to cloud themselves, your wind will actually, in some cases, break the cloud before it hits the ground. So if you're just wind spamming them, they won't be able to vanishing mist themselves. I really wish that I had a scribe amulet or something so that I could display these things easier. But yes, just take my word for it. Just wind spam them, and if they try to cloud themselves, a lot of the times the cloud will just dissipate. Here, I can actually show you what that dissipation will look like. It'll be something like, you know, it'll be like this green mist, and their cloud doesn't exist anymore. They didn't get the invis off, and yeah, if you just wind spam, sometimes that'll just happen. So that's one thing you can do. But generally, you don't want to be that close to Toxicology, because at any given moment, they could just click R and do 100 damage. So the biggest thing, actually, let me do one more. Yeah, if you have Tox offhand, you could potentially just spam it and hope that you break their outbreak, because it's very wide. So you're going to cover a very large area as opposed to the lightning, and you get more chances to, you know, break that outbreak. Break the invisible so that their Toxic Slap doesn't do double damage to you. So if they Shadow Step towards you, maybe just spam your Tox offhand to break the invis. But yeah, generally your actual counterplay, ignoring all these gauntlet matchups, is when they click the button, you click the button. What does that mean? When they Shadow Step towards you, you Shadow Step back, because otherwise you are likely going to take 100 damage. So here's where Conduit kind of shines. It can afford to click the button, and it can match Toxicologists. So most Toxicologists have 2 Shadow Steps and then their Cloud, so that's 3 chances to outbreak. Well, your Conduit, you base have 3 charges, so you can counter that. And then it just comes down to, you know, no cooldowns, back and forth with just your primary spells. But if you have distance, you can just win that with no cooldowns. So it's kind of cool. But yeah, when they Shadow Step towards you, you Shadow Step away. So I have a fight showing that, and I think that this would be a good time to play that for you. So let's see. Verse Toxicologist. So as you can see, just a little tech that I'll show you, that I'll explain what he's doing. He's spamming Corrosion, which is like some, it's long distance. He's spamming his Toxic long distance in hopes that it connects with me, and if it hits me, it'll do 15 damage to my shield, which is kind of nice. So this is a great way to ward off enemies if you're a Toxicologist. He's kind of zoning off this entire mountain. It's very hard for me to push him right now. And just to clarify, he's Toxicologist, so it's like, why would I want to push him? Well, because he has high ground, and I have no angle on him right now. I can't beam him if I wanted to. So I need to get a different angle here. So he's spamming Toxic, you know, trying to keep me off. It's very hard for me to find an opening here. So I see him sliding down. So this gives me an opening because he clouds himself. And I know that he's coming directly in my face, right? He's not going this way. He's not going this way. He is going to cloud right into me, right? So I Shadow Step up. He has no clue where I am. And even if he does, he's certainly not going to be outbreaking me. So he reveals himself to be right there. And guess what? I have height now. And I have lightning sorcery. Into the stun. He Shadow Steps. I Shadow Step. Because I don't want to get outbroken. They click the button. You click the button. He Shadow Steps, but I didn't have any. So thankfully, I didn't have Runic Fluency. So I didn't have any Shadow Steps charged. Thankfully, he decides to Shadow Step onto low ground. Because that would have been terrible. I would have just died. But, beautiful. So, I absolutely miss a fireball. But, remember when I told you to just use fire offhand? It's because sometimes it's absolutely free. When you're fighting Toxicologists, they hate to see that fire offhand because sometimes, you see how far the fire is from him, by the way, right? Well, his cloud has a gigantic hitbox and is hit by that fire right there. So I got value out of the fire gauntlet, even though I absolutely missed, because it's fire versus toxicologist. So he DFs himself, and yeah, he's just stunned again, and he's just dead. That is a good end to the game. Love to see it. So yeah, so that is toxicologist versus conduit. So yeah, it's a lot of hold distance, use fire, press the button when they press the button. Yeah, save your rune charges. You saw just then I could have died. If he didn't rune onto low ground, I probably would have died. Save your rune charges. I could have had more runes there. That would have helped me. Use that wind offhand, break that cloud. Use that fire. You really should be using fire though. Yes, use fire. And yeah, that's pretty good. Are there any questions about toxicologists? I will let you guys leave questions if you want, but I will get right into Stone Shaper. So this is going to be Conduit versus Stone Shaper matchup. So my advice to you is just beam them from high ground. Similar to, what I told you to do with the lightning bolt viability. You should always have high ground on your opponents, but obviously this is specifically useful for Stone Shaper because they need you to be on the ground for them to hit you with their primary spell. So if you have high ground, they're obviously not going to be able to hit you. Even this much high ground is high ground. They cannot hit you if you're standing up here. So I have great movement. Yeah, you just beam them for free from high ground. Let's see. Beam from high ground. Right. Be ready to rune versus that double boulder. Stone Shapers have these boulders that are nearly impossible to miss because of the gigantic splash damage that they have. I am not mad at them. I also have some gigantic AoE. So you are going to need to be ready for these double boulders because they're coming, and they're probably going to do it when they're close range to you, so there's not going to be much time to react, but there is if you know that it's coming. So just be ready. When they boulder, you need to have your rune ready. That's one thing to watch out for. And they're probably going to try to break gap before they do that because it's very hard to hit long range boulders. So be ready for that. Other than that, unless they're insane with fire, they really can't damage you if you keep switching elevations. So what that means is, let's say they're down here. Okay, they're trying to hit me. So I'll just go up here, right? Okay, so they're just gonna come up here and try to hit me. Well, it's like, okay, I'll just go down. And it's like, okay, they're gonna try to go to that. You see what I'm getting at, right? Just keep switching elevations. And they can't really do much about it unless they can hit an air shot, which not a lot can. Yeah, so that's pretty good. So just keep switching elevations. Never spend too long on the same terrain on them because they hit the ground a lot sooner than you would expect, and sometimes they can get free damage because you got kind of cheeky. You wanted to get the potion off. Sometimes it can surprise you how fast they hit the ground with their stone. So don't play around too much with the elevate. Like, you're gonna need to stay active. Like, don't try to get that last bolt off. No, get moving. You need to get off of the elevation or they will hit you. Okay. Obviously hold distance. So that's very anti-double boulder. And this is the final but most important rule. Never, ever push a Stone Shaper on low ground. I don't want to hear it. They are not 1 HP. They are not 1 HP because they have recovery and they're just going to keep healing with their stone skin. You push them thinking that they're low, but they're just not, and then they just turn the fight around. Even if they don't turn the fight around, they are going to be doing significant damage to you, enough damage to the point where you can't handle a third party. So for that reason, never push a Stone Shaper on low ground. Ever. Ever. might be ever. Yeah. Okay, so let's show the video. Stone Shaper versus Conduit. Let's see. Actually, this isn't a Stone Shaper, but this was one thing that I didn't mention in the versus Stone Shaper matchup is sometimes you can just hold your sorcery. You see how he expects me to hit the ground, but I'm just not. I'm just holding my sorcery. It is kind of fantastic. This is one thing that I also love to do with the lightning sorcery, not just for Stone Shaper, but it's very unpredictable when you just hold your sorcery. Like, they really think that you're just gonna hit the ground, but nah, I'm just not. You just stay in the air. Yeah, he swears I'm gonna hit the ground, but I'm just not. And I just stun him into a kill. So obviously he was Pyromancer, but that is something you can do for Stone Shapers. Just hold your sorcery. And he just walked right into my... I held it, and then he walked into it for me. Like, I didn't even need to aim that. You see? He just walks right into it. So that's great. Let's get another... I have an actual Stone Shaper one. Verse Stone Shaper. 2 fights. 12, 11. I should have cut this. I'm unprofessional. 12, 11. So it looks like I have 2 fights. So this is a competitive match. So this is going to be one of the best Stone Shapers, if you know who he is. It's Borsellino. He's very good at the game. By the way, let's just act like we didn't see this guy, because I didn't see him when I was in the match. Let's just act like he's not there. So here he is, Stone Shaper. You see I have the Tax offhand, and let's get into it. So I'm not giving him that free damage. I'm going to keep runing. I'm runing up. I'm not letting him hit me. I rune swap away. Why? Because I'm low on resources here, and if he wants, he can dash fireball me. Nope, I'd rather reset the fight, get my shadow steps back. He is too close to me in open plains, and I don't have enough runes to deal with it. So I'm gonna head out. You know, get that reset. My shadow step is charging. My sorcery is charging. I get that potion off. So this is a full fight reset. He comes back in 10 seconds, don't worry. Here he is. So now I have the high ground. I'm the captain now. So he swears I'm going to hit the ground, but I'm just not. He has a nice fireball. But I just hold my sorcery, and I get the stun off guaranteed. I miss a lot of lightning, but I just have more runes than he does, and I just stay in the air. And I am okay with eating some damage here, because there's not much else I could do. What would I do? Go down here? Go up here? No, I just need to trade. I don't have any cooldowns. But thankfully, he decides to jump into the air, giving me a bunch of free damage. And that's pretty much game. So what I could have done better here was, instead of like runing into the air, I could have runed to different positions. So there's always improvement to be made. And one of the best ways to improve is watching your own VODs or videos, which I'm doing right now. But yeah, so this worked out, but it could have gone even better. Because again, if he hadn't jumped into the air, he could have gotten 2 stone slams off on me, which would have put me in a terrible position for the third party. So I'm kind of glad that I won this fight, but I'm glad that I messed up and was able to show that. So I'm able to show that that #1 rule, which is never push Stone Shaper low ground. I was kind of forced to here, and it worked out, but it could have not, and hopefully you see why. That Stone Slam into the jump, he didn't need to jump there. He could have just kept Stone Slamming, and I would be at 50 HP right now. And that third party wouldn't have been focused it could have been focused on me, you know? And I would have had no HP. So, there's one more Stone Shaper fight in this. Oops. And then this one really shows off that elevations thing excellently. Oh, it's not this guy. It's the next guy. Let's see. So he's levitating for seemingly no reason. That's one thing you shouldn't do versus Conduit. I know that I'm teaching you Conduit versus Stone Shaper right now, but I'll throw in whatever lessons I think of whenever. Never levitate or try not to levitate in general, but especially versus a Conduit user, you're just giving me free damage. Stop levitating so much. Just use your runes, stay on the ground. Like the levitation is not giving you additional mobility, it's giving you less. So he tries to beat me a little bit, and I try to go for some cheeky fireballs, and then I realize I'm just bad at fireballs, so I just decide to grab the reset to further push my advantage in the fight. Like, I'm absolutely winning, but if I get this potion off, I could literally go AFK and win. So this is something you'll see competitive players do a lot. We try to heal as much as possible. If the heal is free, we're going to go for the heal. Now, I thought that I had time to get this pot off. I thought that I would be able to sidestep off of this and that he wouldn't hit me, but he has that heavy slam. So he hits me, and that is where that lesson comes in, where it's like, just leave the high ground as soon as possible, because you never know what, you never know, he jumped in the fracture. You never know if they're going to be able to hit you. But yeah, you saw me just shifting platforms. So I started here, I went from here, I go from the bottom of the hill to the top, to the bottom, back and forth. And then he just fractures himself. So yeah, that is Conduit versus Stone Shaper. Okay, so let's get into versus Frostborn. So the biggest thing here is unawareness is your friend. What does that mean? If a Frostborn sees you and you're both trading at optimal, beaming and optimal frost range, then the Frostborn can win off of their frost sorcery, especially if it's open plains. Like, the Frostborn just has cover in their kit and you just don't. So if we're both trading, a lot of the times, if it's a good Frostborn like Elpadog, which is where I learned, like, this entire section of First Frostborn is based on my fights with him, really. Shout out Elpadog. But if I am, shooting at him and we're both trading, it's like he has cover and I don't. So he's just going to get more shots off than I am, obviously. So that's pretty great, because the Frost Sorcery, that sorcery that I just casted, that blocks all lightning projectiles. I can't shoot through that. So you need to watch out for that. So unawareness is your friend. If the Frostborn sees you, the Frostborn can win off their Frost Sorcery. So it's better to beam them when they don't see you. Potentially juke and re-engage when they aren't looking at you. So all that means is, if we're fighting and I realize he's Frostborn, I'm Conduit, we're in open plains, I'm just going to rune swap and we'll fight later. And maybe I'll creep around a corner and actually be stalking him. He thinks I ran away, but I'm just stalking him, waiting for the right moment. And then when he doesn't see me, beam him for 60, and yeah, I'm okay with this fight now. Now we can 1v1. But you really want to have them be unaware, because if you can lead the fight as a Conduit, if you can get the first 2 seconds that they don't see you, you can usually just win, because you just did like 60, 80 damage. It is kind of crazy. So unawareness is definitely your friend in this matchup, because you don't really want to trade, especially in the open plains, for the reasons I just told you. Line of sight, if you need to engage and they need to be aware of you, okay, line of sight is your friend. You need to have some type of cover. You need to have some type of line of sight break, because they are just doing far too much damage, and they don't need line of sight, but you do, because they have cover whenever, but you need to have a physical wall that you can jump to dodge their frost. Alternatively, you could just have fire offhand and firewall, and then that is portable cover. So that is an alternative. Another thing is, if they're running away, stun their frost trails. I talked about that earlier. If they frost sorcery themselves, let's talk about this. So you see how lightning doesn't go through that, right? You saw how it was stopped in its tracks, and then when the Frost Sorcery ran out, it finally made its connection to the other side. That is because the Frost Sorcery was indeed blocking the lightning spell. But if you noticed, Frost Sorcery has no roof, does it? So you could just lightning sorcery them. Yeah. But here's the thing. You have to assume that they have Harmony, because they probably do. A good Frostborn is running Harmony. Enough said. Frostborns in competitive, like the best players in the game who run Frostborn are using Harmony, because the Frost Sorcery, I mean, not that you can't be the best player unless you use it, but I'm telling you off of what I've experienced, obviously. It's because if you Frost Sorcery, and then if I threw a cloud into this, it would insta-freeze, and then whoever is in the Frost Sorcery would get frozen. So that Frostborn is getting punished just for using their sorcery? Like, no, that's crazy. So they have to run Harmony to avoid that. Also, obviously, it helps you with the wind spam on your Frost Trail. It helps you with the lightning on your Frost Trail. Because I'm going to tell you right now, every single gauntlet in the game but Ice messes up Ice Trails. Toxic, so they don't want to be slowed. So a lot of them are running Harmony for these various reasons. So you need to assume that your Lightning Sorcery, to tie it back into the Conduit versus Frostborn matchup, when you sorcery a Frostborn, you need to assume that they're not going to be stunned, because they probably won't. You need to assume that it's just, okay, get out of your Frost Sorcery. That's why you're casting it. You're casting it to make them move into your lightning bolts. Yep. And Lightning Sorcery, the Frost, yep. If they are, Frostborn, when they hold their bow down and they charge their Frost, it allows them to levitate in the air, similar to this. Yeah, if they do that, they're just dead, because you have lightning. If you see a Frostborn doing that, I would like you to direct all of your mana bar into them, because they are just going to get melted, and that is great, and that is fun. So let's watch a little video. It's Conduit versus Frostborn. First Frostborn. Here we go. So let's see. He saw me before I saw him, but thankfully I had a good enough reaction time. Oh, he wasn't. No, really what it was is, thankfully, he wasn't charging his bow when he first saw me. So this is when I first see him. He first saw me a second ago, but he just recently got in a position to charge his bow. So here he goes. He's charging. Or he's not, but now he's charging. But yeah, I hard dodged that because I see him. I saw him start to levitate with his Frost, so I know that it's time to Shadow Step, because I don't want to take 60 damage. So I dodge that. I go into more beams. Now, I assumed that he has Harmony, because I have fought so many Frostborns. If you are new to Conduit, you might push here, because you're like, oh, he's stunned. Nope, he's just not stunned, because he has Harmony. So you see the Frost Trail is lit up with lightning, but it just doesn't matter. So you need to assume that they have Harmony if you're fighting a Frostborn. So, not to pat myself on the back, but I make the right play here by holding my distance. I'm not going to try to capitalize on a stun that doesn't exist. So I just hold distance, and I had the Lightning Sorcery. I think it was just, it wasn't because he Frost Sorceried. It's crazy like that. He Frost Sorceried, and then I immediately Lightning. It's not because he did it. I was going to do that anyways, but he just happened to Frost Sorcery then. So I Lightning, and now, yeah, he's just dead. I Shadow Step again, and I just have more runes than him. I'm just out-runing him at this point, and it comes down to some quick, some Fireball, I want to say dash work, but I'm using Shadow Step, but it's kind of the same thing, close range Fireball fight. And at that point, he just wasn't ready for that fight. he didn't want that close range fight. What he really wanted, his win condition was, let me land a snipe on him. And after they didn't land, multiple snipes, I think they were shook. And then, at this point, it's like they're not going to... Because I say they were shook because they didn't hit any talks, I fought this guy multiple times this match, and he had some good talks, but in this specific fight, he didn't hit any of his frost, so maybe his confidence wasn't there, but they easy cleanup with the fire, so that was kind of cool. So some things that I used there were, abuse that levitation. So I got some nice damage in there. It was only 1 damage, but I got a free little bit of damage there. This is a good Frostborn because they didn't stay in their levitation, and they're using Harmony. Like, that's how I know this guy's good. Using Harmony. And then another thing I did was, stun into that Frost Sorcery, which I usually wouldn't have been able to hit him, but I was because I had the stun. And yeah, he misses the top. Like, he's just not ready. There's so many sounds happening on his screen. His screen is being lit up by lightning. His Frost Sorcery didn't work. He just missed both of his snipes. This guy's mental is not there right now. So at that point, it's just like, okay, just clean up with fire. He's not ready. So this was great. This was a really great fight. Yeah. So that is versus Frostborn. So cool. So let's talk about Conduit versus Conduit. And just to go back into the general structure of this, we have 2 more matchups. We have Conduit and Tempest, and then we have preferred talents, preferred builds. I'll talk about talents I like, gauntlets I like, and then runes. And then we will wrap it up. So, Conduit versus Conduit. And also, feel free to ask questions. I have not had that up. I will answer any questions you guys have. Cool. So, Conduit versus Conduit. So, the biggest thing here is having the high ground. This is not my favorite matchup, Conduit versus Conduit, because it is not... it's just not fun. You're both just kind of... You know what I mean? Like, it's... there's not much movement into it, so it's... I don't like to pick these fights, Conduit versus Conduit. My biggest thing is... let me just read from my notes, actually. I don't want to freestyle it. It's... Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Open fire first. Potential reset if they hit you first. So you need to be the first one to shoot. Otherwise, they are just going to do more damage to you than you are to them. Assuming that they are, equally accurate as you are. Yeah, open fire first. Try to be the first one to see them, which is, obviously, you can't control that all the time. So if they hit you first, maybe reset the fight. And all that means is, get out of there. Get your potions off, and then go back into the fight. Maybe get your TP swap, reset. Yeah, try to get the first hit off on them. Definitely have high ground for that superior, for the same reasons. You have that superior angle on them. They're not able to hit you, but you can hit them. You can back up for cover, but they can't because you have high ground. Just high ground is fantastic in this game for many reasons, not just on Conduit. Yeah, and not just in this matchup. Yeah, potentially break gap before they engage if you trust your offhand. If it's Conduit versus Conduit, and if you know that you hit those fireballs, maybe just engage on them, and maybe just do your thing with your offense. That is an alternative that you can do. If you mastered your dash work, maybe just do that. Because I would say that this is like a close range 1v1 using close range gauntlet and short cooldown rune like a fireball dash 1v1 or Tak Shadow Step 1v1. I would say that this is more skillful than 2 conduits going with their beams. So like literally anyone can sit here and beam, but you have to master the movement. You have to master the projectile of the close range gauntlets. So if you have done that, if you have done that work, if you feel confident in that, then I would recommend doing that, because you know that you probably have a better chance than just trading lightning, because any little Billy can just trade lightning, but you need to practice to be able to trade with your offense. So I definitely recommend that if if you are confident with that. That's definitely way better than just trading. Yeah, stun them. That is another thing. Stun them. Most conduits are not running Harmony for the same reasons that I kind of got into earlier. There are just other talents that feel a lot better on conduits, so just stun them into some free damage. And yeah, those are the three things. Those are the few things. You know, get the high ground, open fire first, try to break gap if you trust your offhand, and then just stun them forehead. So let me show you the conduit versus conduit matchup. 1 HP. So I have 2 conduits to show you. So 1 HP versus conduit, he got stunned. Let's see what this is about. I think I had 1 HP and I was fighting a conduit. This is the wrong one. Let's see. It was when... I think it's this conduit, yeah. Yeah, he walks right into that. And I'm missing everything, but I have Power Surge. Oh my god. This is so bad. Is this even the right one? No, here it is. This is the actual one. Okay. I'm like looking for the fight. I'm fighting so many conduits. Yeah, you see how he just beams me into a bunch of damage, but here's the fatal mistake that he made. He is like close range beaming me for some reason. And it's probably because he has Frost and Lightning. He's also seems to be new. But, you know, I fireball him once into a sorcery because he didn't have Harmony, because he's Conduit. Most Conduits don't run Harmony. I stun him, and then at this point, he's just dead. Yeah, this does get me. But let's talk about this display of monstrosity. What is this? These 2 seconds of just absolute electricity, arc. Oh my god, I don't even have the words for this. That was a lot of lightning. Yeah, those are my words. But yeah, I stun him because he's Conduit and he doesn't have Harmony. And then I get the kill because of that. So that's one way to win the matchup, you know, just the stun. But, you know, that's generally just good against any class. Really what it came down to was that guy also didn't have any close range superiority. So, like, I guess break gap played into that clip as well. But, so here's me fighting 2 conduits, and in this clip I'm going to show, you know, just breaking gap on some conduits that that rely on their beams. They're not ready for these close range fights, and you'll see that right here. I don't even have a dash, but I was able to do some close range stuff because they're just a lot of conduits just can't use their offense. So this was remember, this was the open plains abuse clip. Let me get back around here. This is when the fire starts. This is when the offhand, you know, break gap thing starts. So as you can see, I was full shield, and then this conduit absolutely beams me. I have no shield, so what do I decide to do? I'm like, okay, let me do 2 things. Let me get near a wall, because I'm getting beamed from behind as well. I know there's people behind me. Let me get near a wall and break gap with the same teleport, right? So I break gap, I firewall him, and then he runs away. I start fighting this guy. And I mean, so that was just, you know, some close range fireballing. I guess this TP, that's not really part of it. But yeah, like the biggest thing is these guys really just want to beam you for free across the map. And a lot of the times, if you push them, like you saw, he beamed me for 80 damage, right? He beamed me for my entire shield and then a little bit of my health. and then I use a resource. So me teleporting there is not smart. I use a resource to push an opponent that has offensive pressure on me. It's not smart, but it works out because this guy is not confident in his offhand. I hit him with a firewall, and I hit him with like 2 lightning, and he disengages. It's like, wait, you were just winning that engagement, but no, just a little bit of pressure, pushing these conduits, it scares them. He's backing off now, even though he was totally winning that engagement, and he knows he has a 2v1 right here. That is actually why he comes back, but yeah, breaking that gap was enough to secure me this fight. And then this guy also didn't have any dash. This was just great. He also isn't good at fire. So, yeah. So that's cool. Conduit versus Conduit, yeah. Cool. So, let's get into Conduit versus Tempest. So, Conduit versus Tempest. Okay. So, step 1. I want you to just take in the moment and just laugh because you have found a free exile. Conduit versus Tempest. This is fire versus water. This I can't think of any examples right now, but this basically Conduit is your heart. Exactly, someone in the chat. Laugh. Tempest detected. Laugh and point. Yes. This is your hard counter. You absolutely obliterate Tempest as a Conduit. Why? Because they are floating around in the air very slowly. That's about it. They're just floating in the air very slowly. And lightning is the anti-air gauntlet. So, literally just beam them. If they're wind jumping, they probably are. They're going to be easier to hit due to their slowed gravity. Hold distance. With Squall, they can certainly out DPS you with fire if you let them. Just spam S key rune. Stun them as they walk into you, similar to Pyromancer. A lot of Tempests have good movement. Like really good Tempest players have good movement and they won't walk into it. But, something else that you could try to do. Because the best Tempest players have to try so much harder than other classes that they're just like insane at like their dash work. It's great. If you want to get good at the game, I recommend trying Tempest first. I say in the Conduit class. Obviously, hold distance. Be aware of NATOs being thrown on top of you. They can throw a NATO on top of you while you're S-keying. They throw a NATO and then they get that updraft movement. But really, what that does for you on the receiving end is while you were getting NATO'd, you're incapacitated. You're like, okay, what is happening? I need to react to this stimulus now. There's stuff on my screen. I'm stunned now. It's like, okay, none of my lightning is hitting them. So watch out for that. Be aware of, a NATO being thrown on you. But this is why you have like 900 rune charges. Yeah. You should not lose this matchup. If you lose this matchup, just go over these tips again. I don't know what I was gonna say, but just go over these tips and then you should win the matchup. But let's show Conduit versus Tempest. So I think this is Death. I have my kill feed off. We were fighting. I know Death was in this match, and Death is a good player. For anyone who, that's why I mentioned it. He was 1 HP. That's not the actual fight. So I had a feeling. So this is the thing, in Clash, and I could tell that this guy, like I saw his movement. I'm like, okay, this is a player. You know what I mean? I knew that he was gonna drop on me again. So I just sit here because when I was in this Clash match, I was like, okay, I'm farming Tempest clips. I'm just gonna sit here. He's gonna spawn on me again, and he just does. Here he's gonna. Let's see. He's gonna be right here. He's gonna be right there. Yep, there he is. So I found him. Get a little chip damage off. Not sure if he knows where I am yet. He doesn't. Oh, wow. I absolutely missed that stun, but it just doesn't matter. I just hold my lightning because I have infinite mana. I'm just going to hold this, let my potential energy start charging up. 16, 18. Nice. Love to see it. Just start holding lightning down because I know that he's going to go in the air. And it's like, that was very smart. Throw the Tackle Cloud into me, stun me, break line of sight. He starts wind spamming. Nice corrosion. This guy is playing this excellently. He pushes me, which is kind of predictable. So I'm able to get the fireball. I think he expected me to start S-keying, you know? You just take all that damage, you're scared, you know? But nah, I'm just gonna fireball you. And then, oh, you wanna pop behind that tree? Nah, I'm just Conduit. Just hit you behind the tree. And then he wind jumps, and it just doesn't matter because I have hit scan gauntlet. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. Kind of just don't let them break gap, hold high ground. Like I didn't hold high ground. I jumped down because this is the thing. The thing is, Conduit versus Tempest is so one-sided that you can throw a lot of these principles out of the window and still just win, just based on obvious factors. But yeah, the advice is, you know, hold distance. Don't let them, because you saw the second night, and you know what? I didn't take the advice and I got punished. So let's talk about that, because that's something that we can learn from this situation. I didn't hold distance and I jumped from high ground, so he got the cloud on me and he got a lot of damage off on me. Yeah, not high air, yeah, exactly. But yeah, one thing I also want to mention is, wow, this has a lot of mobility, because 2 seconds ago he was right here. Look how far, like, I understand he goes up, but it feels like he went up and out. Like, did he have escapist? This guy moved so much. Anyways, yeah. So Conduit versus Tempest. Yeah, just hold M1, hold distance, and chuckle because you found a free exile. So that is that. Now we have finished all of the matchups. Yay! Okay, let's do preferred talents, preferred gauntlets, and preferred runes with Conduit. We're going to be talking about your builds here. So let's do that. So let's start with talents. That's why I backed out. Click play, click edit. So here are your talents. So like I was saying earlier, you have, I'm going to say all these talents. I'm going to say the talents that I was talking about earlier and just explain what they are. So before I was saying, you know, harmony among the other mind, you don't want to run that among the other mind talents, and let me say why. So runic fluency gives you another rune charge. That is insane on Conduit. That is just sending you over the top with your runic superiority. Like, you already have the 3 base, but now you have 4, and now you have a faster cooldown on your actual runes, as opposed to, I say actual runes because sorcery cooldown is rune cooldown, but only when you're like using your brain. So it's like, this is much more free in terms of rune cooldown. And yeah, it's just you can shadow step 4 times in a row with this, and then by the time you've used that 4th shadow step, you probably have 2 more charged. So runic fluency is just insane. Focused mana is insane. You do so much damage. It has great synergy with Conduit, with the power surge. Apart from power surge though, just doing 46 damage with your fireballs on Conduit is very good. You just want that extra damage on your offhand. Yes. So those were, and Spellslinger obviously, allowing you to rune swap, the best mechanic in the game. Obviously. So these 3 talents are competing for your attention over Harmony, which is why I don't run Harmony. But at the end of this lesson, my biggest thing is take all of these lessons with you and do what you want with them. You can run Harmony if you want to, you know. Just make sure that you consider everything else that I mentioned. and it's up to you to decide what is good and what isn't. It's your game at the end of the day. So here's Fervor. Let's talk about Fervor. Basically, just run Fervor. So let's move on. Nah. This cast speed on Conduit, it means that your lightning bolts are coming out just faster, which is just insane on the lightning gauntlet specifically. It just feels really good. In my opinion, lightning gauntlet is unplayable without Fervor, because the bolts are just coming out too slow, comparatively speaking. And there's no easy way to show you that. But I really would just recommend that you hop in a match and just hop in practice mode and just try it, and you'll just see what I mean. So Fervor feels pretty necessary because, like I just said, your lightning is just coming out faster. You are just doing more damage because of it, and the gauntlet, in my opinion, feels clunky without the extra speed on it. So it just feels better. So Fervor is pretty necessary, and on all the builds that I will be giving to you, include Fervor in them. And then you have Recovery, Thirsty. These are your live longer talents. You need to, in my opinion, run one of these if you are thinking about seriously competing. If you're just having fun, run what you want. But these are really great sustenance talents. But anyways, let's go into the builds. Really what I wanted to highlight was just the mind, because those are very I touched over those earlier. But so my first build that I will recommend to you is Rune Swap. That is the best solo build in my opinion. I will sit there and argue my opinion to you, but this isn't this place or time. It is the best in my opinion. And that is going to be Spellslinger, Fervor, Recovery. Spellslinger, Fervor, Recovery. So what this allows you to do is, I'm losing a fight? Yeah, I'm just not. I'm just going to teleport away. My lightning? Yeah, that just does a lot of damage because I have Fervor. And then Recovery, you just live longer, and it's just great. These two you don't really need to think about, which is fantastic. They are just excellent passives. You can't go wrong. And then Rune Swap, you just can't go wrong. This mechanic is insane. My favorite mechanic in the game. Also, Spellslinger is just a very situational and adaptive talent. If you can't find your rune, you're gonna find a stone gauntlet. You're gonna find you're gonna find something. If you can't find TP, you're gonna find flight. You're gonna find invis. So the thing about Spellslinger is a lot of the time you see no debuff by picking these things up, and one day you'll just get free damage off with stone, because this is the thing about stone gauntlet swap on Conduit. When people are fighting Conduit and they're like, oh, he has fire offhand, they are just walking on the ground and they swear they can walk on the ground for free. But nah, I just also have stone gauntlet. It catches people off guard 100% of the time. They are 100%. Wow, that's far. No, it just isn't. Like, literally no one is expecting Stone Swap. Even the best players. This will catch anyone off guard. So Stone Swap is great. Not that that's what I recommend. Obviously, use the Rune Swap, and then if you can't find a rune, maybe pick up that extra gauntlet. But that's why it's adaptational and situational. Because let's say you're all out of potions. There are no potions in the final circle. You might want to pick up that Stone Gauntlet in addition to your Rune Swap. Like, you can grab whatever you find and make anything useful. That's why I love it, because you can just adapt. It's very fun. And experimentation is the biggest thing with this. Don't be afraid to try Wolf Invis. Like, there's some plays that you can do. It's very fun. Spellslinger Conduit. It is just the greatest thing in this game. Yeah. So that is my build that I recommend to you, Rune Swap. So, here's just the best build. This is a very meta build. It's balanced, high damage. It's just focus mana, fervor recovery. You see literally 0 debuff by running this. You don't need to think at all. All of these are passives. This is damage for having mana, which you don't need to think about. This is cast speed with no activation. This is recovery with no activation. You just need to take damage. These 3 talents you don't need to think about. They are very good. This is the best combination. Literally just run this. If you're not sure literally just run this. You lose nothing, you gain everything. Get extra damage, you live longer. You can't go wrong. Yeah. So something that I like to run, another build. Oh, I have a few more things to say. So obviously, focus mana has that synergy with power surge, which is great. Can't go wrong, don't have to think. In squads, you can swap recovery for thirsty, because obviously if you drink a potion, 50% of that potion's effects will, in addition to 100% healing you, 50% will also heal your nearby teammates, which is fantastic. Yeah, so you can swap these. Recovery and thirsty, even in solos, in my opinion, are interchangeable. Recovery outshining thirsty by quite a bit, but thirsty is situationally better even in solos. That's why it's like I call them interchangeable. But my final say on it is, use recovery in solos, use thirsty in squads. Yeah, that's about it. So it looks like we have a question. Do the talents you pick change depending on which offhand I'm choosing? Thanks for a second. I don't. No, they don't. I'm really on Conduit. I'm always using, and I'll get into it. I'm always using that fire offhand, and that's on all my builds. That's a good question, because some classes, for example, like toxicologists, maybe they don't necessarily need fervor, but they do if they're using wind offhand. So that is a relevant question. But yeah, I don't change talents too much because fervor, like I said, absolutely necessary on Conduit. Recovery, thirsty. Why would you not run these 2 talents? And then at that point, it's like, okay, I don't have space for much else. I'm just gonna pick focus mana or spellslinger, and it's Sorry if I missed it. I just popped in. But what's the benefit of running thirsty with Conduit over other classes? Yeah, welcome. So it's so actually there is some benefit specifically on Conduit. Interestingly enough, now that you got me thinking, Conduit gets all those rune charges, so they can TP or they can rune into some free potions for their teammates. They could final circle. They could zone off part of the circle so that no one else can walk near them. They place their sorcery down. They start drinking potions for their teammates because no one can walk near them. They have a lightning storm in front of them. No one can push them. So yes, you can get some potions off. Arguably more free with Conduit than other classes. I think the only other class that can compete with Conduit in terms of free potions would be toxicologists because they can turn invis. I think that's about it. Everything else, yeah, Conduit would get more potions off. That's with putting like 30 seconds of thought into it, but that's a really good question. I prefer you use this chat for the questions. Okay. Honestly, haven't been looking at the YouTube. Okay. So that's that build. You can alternatively swap out recovery or thirsty for reckless and just run the solid max damage Conduit. Now, this build is disgusting. There's an argument to be made. I haven't fully tested it. There's an argument to be made that reckless is situationally better than recovery, with especially with good team composition. Because reckless can out damage the recovery healing. But recovery is just a lot safer and more free. But yeah, you can swap this out to run max damage, and then you get the 25 from this, 25% damage buff from here, 30% from here, and then +5 from your Conduit, so that's up to 25 damage per bolt, if I'm correct. Then you have the Fervor cast time. It's absolutely ridiculous. You will shred anyone in 3 seconds. I actually have a clip of that. I kind of want to, yeah, I'm going to whip that out. 1 second. Forbidden magic. Now, I wasn't even gonna show this. As you can see, this isn't even a downloaded video, but I really feel like you guys should just witness this forbidden magic. I call it forbidden magic because this was the first time that I ran max damage Conduit, because it always, I didn't run it because I'm like, oh, this is cheese, this is everyone talks, like when Conduit first got buffed, it used to not have a damage buff. It used to not have potential energy give you extra damage. So when potential energy first started giving you all this damage, people ran, in addition to that, you know, these 2 damage talents, and then it was in the community known as like a very cheese build for a long time, running max damage Conduit. So for that reason, I titled this video Forbidden Magic, because this was like the first time I ran max damage. This was far after it got nerfed, but this was still a very recent patch, so this is... you'll just see. Oh, okay, so there's an enemy, right? Nah, he's just dead. Is that okay with you? It's not okay with me. What just happened? What just happened, dude? Oh my god. Okay. Let's talk about this. Imagine I didn't exactly. I'm running a belt too. I'm running a belt. I'm not even getting full recklessness activation. Yeah. So let's talk about this next one. So this guy. So he just, you know, he's just playing the game. He's just sniping the first guy he sees, right? So I just, you know, he's going for a snipe on the first guy he sees. Nah, he's just dead and stayed stunned for the entire duration of the fight. I'm using air quotes, by the way, of the fight. He was stunned the entire duration. Like, what is happening? It's so busted, dude. It's so busted. Yes, the max damage. So let's, here's actually some more high ground abuse. That you'll see right here. I just do lots of damage. I don't really secure a kill, but I just do so much damage here that I added it to the clip. Look at this. My gosh. Look at this. Like, I just eat the stone. It doesn't matter. Like, I'll just stand still. I'll drop on low ground. It doesn't matter. Oh my god. Max damage Conduit. That is so broken. Yeah, if you couldn't tell, my opinions on current state of Conduit are, you know, I love Conduit for the movement. I have always loved it for the movement. I think that potential energy does too much damage. But that's not what this is about. Let's go back into the preferred talents. So, yeah, back on that. After, you know, meta build, balance, high damage, we have fun, high mobility. So that is the next build. And that's literally just runic fluency. Yeah. Fervor. Obviously, you need fervor. And then escapist. So you have lots of movement here. With escapist, I'll actually jump in again. Just so you can see. You're just very fast. You have lots of dashes, and it just feels very good. You are very, very zoom, very zoom. And this is just a fun build. You still do like very decent damage with fervor, and potential energy is so good that you don't really need the extra damage mods. Just sit there beaming for like an extra 2 seconds, and that makes up for the lack of damage mods. But 2 seconds is a long time in this game, so there's options. You can run whatever you feel like it. But as you see, or maybe you don't see, but I can tell, I'm moving a lot quicker with Escapist. Like my S key is very fast, my strafing is a lot faster, and I also just can dash 4 times in a row. And the next one's already back pretty instantly, which is great. And this is only 5-second cooldown right now. This gets up to 15 seconds, so the dashes would come back even faster. So I really like this build. Very fun, high mobility build. Yeah. So I have one more build after this, but let me just take this question. So what role would you say provides the most value for the squad on Conduit? The DPS is cheese, as you've addressed, but with the ability to use rune swap and reposition, is that value worth dropping the DPS for team utility? I think I just answered it. I don't know. I don't know if I answered it, but maybe I did. I'm saying so much that I'm like barely even listening to myself. But but I think that yeah, I think that you should run definitely not rune swap in trios. You should run focus mana or fluency. Like just do damage for your team. Yeah, I did answer it when I was talking about team composition, because I was like, you can run reckless. Yeah, just do your damage build. It's just better. That's your team composition. Your role on the squad, in my opinion, is not to juke and live, because that stuff is like only really good when you're like trying to get away. Like in terms of like winning the fight, Conduit's role in winning that fight is doing that chip damage from the distance, while maybe Pyro and Toxicologists are on the front lines. Yeah, so that's good. And then the last build that I'd recommend is I actually don't recommend this, but it's a build. It's the last build, because there's like 40 different, there's so many different combinations. Obviously there's a lot of talents here, but I decided to give you 4 builds. This is the least viable in my opinion, but it's still a build, and it's not bad. So you can run Recovery, Vigor, and Finders Keepers. So here's why it's bad: because you don't have Fervor. Here's why it's good: you just don't die. You have 250 HP. Yeah, not HP, but active hit points. That is the same thing, whatever. Hopefully you know what I mean. You have 150 HP, you have 100 shield. So Vigor and Recovery have excellent synergy, because you get the extra up to 50. This says 25, but it's maximum of 50, so it's 50 HP, and then on top of that you get additional recovery. So recovery is on health damage taken. You regenerate 50% of damage taken. So if you have 100 health, you could get 50 HP back from recovery, but if you have 150, obviously it's going to be more. So yeah, so it's pretty good. And then Finders Keepers is just worse than Fervor, but my assumption is that you're running this on a squad, because why else would you run Vigor Recovery? I mean, you have to, like, in my opinion, you should only run Vigor Recovery on a squad. Okay, so and then your role there would be playing your back end lightning, similar to the high damage build, but now it's just a lot harder to punish that Conduit that's sitting in that back end. So this could potentially be good. The only thing is you're just not doing as much damage because you don't have the Fervor. But since this is a squad build, you have the Finders Keepers, which is buffing your front end. You are giving them the scrolls that they need so that they have the Fervor, they have the potions, they are full HP. So this is a good team support and also tank build. You could also run this in solos. Don't, but you could run this in solos. Just in my opinion, it's very hard to justify not using Fervor. It's very necessary on Conduit, in my opinion. Yeah, so that's the preferred talents. Let's get into preferred offhand gauntlets. Let's see, Ambi, and then Spellslinger, Fervor. Am I? Oh wow, I'm so bad. Let's act like that didn't happen. Okay. So preferred offhand. I definitely in this. Okay, I have said this so many times, but I will give you a specific order now. Fire, toxic, wind. In that order. Those are the best offhands for Conduit. Fire, then toxic, then wind. So what do all these have in common? They are all close range gauntlets. Obviously, your offhand, or maybe not obviously, your offhand should make up for your primary gauntlet's weaknesses. So lightning is great long range, not so great close range. Fire, not so great long range because of the, it takes forever to reach there. Like I shot the lightning after, but the lightning almost hit him first. And it would have if I was far enough away. But, fire obviously not so great long range. Lightning obviously making up for that. So they help each other out there. Same thing with toxic, close range gauntlet. Same thing with wind, close range gauntlet. So where fire outshines the other two is just its consistency when factoring in the idea that you are using so many runes. You are maneuvering around your opponent, and you are using a lot of, a lot of your combat is aerial, so you're going to be above your opponent a lot. And Tox just isn't very consistent when introducing elevations. Like fire is just a lot easier to hit at this angle, and you're going to get the full damage as opposed to like Tox. Like Conduit is trying to fight at this range. It's like, okay, why are you using Tox at this range? And like those, you see what I'm saying? Like those aerial shadow steps are not as effective with Tox. But I mean, obviously you could just play differently. It's just in my opinion. See, like that fire would have done full damage, and it's just, in my opinion, the fire complements the high mobility a lot more than the Tox does. But that's just my take. There are definitely Conduits who prefer Tox over fire. The biggest thing that makes me, usually I'm like, okay, try what you want. It's opinion. The reason why I'm saying this is factual, fire is better on Conduit than toxic, is it probably comes down, like everything else I just mentioned is great and everything, but it really probably comes down to that toxicologist matchup. You are literally at like, I want to say like plus 100% advantage if you have fire instead of toxic versus a toxicologist. Like that fire is just going to put you over the top. And more than toxicologist matchup, firewall into zapping is just one of the best combos in the game, or like I said before, lack thereof combo in the game, because it goes through, which is just fantastic. It's super balanced play, defensive and offensive at the same time. It's just fantastic. So yeah, that toxicologist matchup and also that interaction, I feel like puts fire over toxicologist or over toxic gauntlet in terms of offense. But another thing you could do with toxic is you can break line of sight with that sorcery, which you can't do with fire. Technically fire, it makes it a little harder to see, but you can still technically see through the fire, but you can't through toxic. So if I shadow step here, I am much more gone than if I shadow stepped and that was a firewall. Are you following? Because I turned invisible and they didn't see me turn invisible, as opposed to I turned invisible in front of them, so they were able to track me through the firewall. Are you following? So yeah, so that's one thing that toxic has over it. Breaking the actual line of sight is good. Also, you can throw this into frost sorceries. There's different matchups, but overall fire in my opinion. And then Wind is here because I didn't talk much about wind, and that's because you can't weave wind into your movement. It's similar to lightning in that lightning you need to beam and then rune and then beam, whereas like you can weave fireballs into your dashes, like, and it's just much better because it's much more burst damage. If you try to weave a wind shear or weave a lightning into a mobility, it's 11. You just did 12 damage and then ruined, as opposed to 36 damage and then ruin. So wind as an offhand on lightning is good. Don't get me wrong. It's just it's almost the same thing as lightning, in terms of that it's a chip damage gauntlet, and it kind of feels bad to have 2 chip damage gauntlets because you don't have much burst. And also you can't weave in between the shots like I was saying before. But all that being said, wind offhand is still very good on Conduit because you can't miss wind. It's ridiculously cheese. If I'm fighting this guy and I see him first, because we talked about that, you know, you get the first damage off, you're usually gonna win, but wind just completely solidifies that. So if I'm bursting him and, you know, I hit him for 60 first, and then now we're damage trading, it's like, okay, the difference between me and him is I can't miss my wind, he can miss his fireballs. If you have more damage than them and you break gap, which you have all the tools to break gap, you pretty much just win by holding M1 on wind. There's not much missing you can do here, and it's very good. But, you know, for all the other reasons I mentioned before, you know, burst, weaving in between shots, you know, you won't always see them before they see you. You know, what if they're W keying you? Your only defense is wind and lightning. That's not very favorable. You know, fire's the most consistent gauntlet. So fire, tox, then wind in that order. Yeah, pretty much. Oh, one more thing with toxic is that, see, I didn't even talk about, you'll notice that in this class, I didn't talk much about gauntlet combinations, and that's because lightning doesn't have too many. This is perhaps for balancing purposes, or perhaps for, you know, logical, you know, this shouldn't synergize with this purposes, like stone and lightning. That'd be weird to have, you know, but there's not many combinations in the game for lightning, but here's one of them. So you have the Tox Cloud, and you can stun people, so that's pretty good. This stun has a ridiculous AoE. Like, wait for it to charge again. This stun is very strong. So running Tox with lightning is good because you have 2 stunning sorceries, right? Which is kind of cool. But this AoE on this particular interaction, it's my friend Tifal, he calls it EMP, electromagnetic pulse. He calls these EMPs, but yeah, the range on it is ridiculous. Like, I am stunned and I'm all the way over here. I'm nowhere near the cloud, so it's very good. It has a, you know, it's a bigger range than lightning sorcery. It just takes a second to proc. You saw I didn't get instantly stunned. First, the little beam of lightning needs to connect to you, and then it needs to remain connected for like a second, and then it like stuns you. But yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, so those are the offhands. I'll take any questions, but I will move into the next section for now. Yeah, preferred runes. So I like talking about runes. I like, my favorite runes on Conduit are, where are the runes? What am I doing? You know, Shadow Step Teleport, already in my inventory, and then Dash Flight. And you already know, like, literally these are your rune swapping runes. So you have, you know, you can dash into the TP or dash into a flight, you know, combat rune, travel rune, combat rune, travel rune, right? Dash is your combat rune, Shadow Step combat rune, flight and TP are your travel runes. So if you're running Spellslinger, obviously take these two. If you don't have Spellslinger, in my opinion, run Combat Rune if you're looking for more consistency and more control over your close range fights. If you just want to cheese it out in Clash and just fight people except never fight them, then you can definitely run TP only. Definitely. You don't necessarily need a combat rune. But just prepare to be, W keyed, which means, people will just run at you and just spam their spells, and you can't do much about it. You can't dodge. So this is why RuneSwap is the best Conduit build, in my opinion, for solos. But, yeah, you can run TP without combat rune. Especially in Clash, where, deaths don't matter so much. It's all about, farming damage and exiles. You will definitely, maybe not definitely, but there's an argument to be made that you can get more exiles and damage with the teleports as opposed to the shadow steps. The only instance where something that you need to consider when using TP only instead of and not having a combat rune is if you're playing the battle royale mode, you need to get rid of TP before the final circle, or you just lose. Because teleport, first of all, you'll probably be teleporting into the zone because the zone is so small, but really what it comes down to is teleport has a 12-second cooldown. People are just out moving you. You also have a 1-second animation. It is just not a consistent dodge. You will be obliterated close range. You need to have a different rune before final circle if you are going to main TP in the BR. Flight, on the other hand, is interesting because final circle, there is something that you can do which most people frown upon, but I like to think of myself as the pioneer of flying straight up. And literally just raining AoE down. This used to be so oppressive because there was a scribe amulet in the game. So amulets just give mana now. They used to give stats like talents. So there used to be this amulet where every single time you use a rune, you get your sorcery charge. That means, and that amulet was on a 5-second cooldown. That means that every rune was on a 5-second cooldown, and your lightning sorcery was on a. So every 5 seconds, I'm just flying up, sending down lightning. It was so dumb, but no, it's still very strong, and you can still flight cheese final circle. It's just it's less oppressive. You have your lightning sorcery charges a lot a lot slower, so you can spam the AoE a lot less. But even still, if you're running maybe Tox and lightning, you still have 2 stunning sorceries. So if the circle is pretty small and you're in the air the entire time, not taking damage, raining damage down, you are still at a massive advantage. So you can technically get away with running only flight for that reason, maybe. But always, I'm gonna say, RuneSwap best build, because you never know. Even when you're raining down sorceries, it will eventually become a 1v1. And if he's full HP, because he had, for whatever reason, he might be full HP, you're not gonna 1v1 him with flight if he has dash and he's close range. So, maybe RuneSwap, maybe not. I've given you all the options. You decide. Okay. So, yeah, so those are the runes. Abuse. Yeah. So, definitely abuse your rune charges to never be close to your opponent. Get that long distance beam that you are designed for, just kind of reminding you of your overall win condition. You want the distance. You want to be spamming that S key. You want to be heading out and beaming people, hitting them before they hit you, seeing them first, resetting the fight if it's not favorable. You have the tools to pick your fights. You don't need to fight every fight. You are, I like to think of Conduit as pretty omnipresent. You are everywhere that you want to be, and all at once too. It's great. So pick your fights, be smart. You have the tools, use them. You can abuse your rune charges to never be close to your opponent, or you can abuse your rune charges to be the ultimate brawler. Like I was showing you before, you can have 4 consecutive dashes, which is ridiculous. Nobody else has that but Conduit. It's very good. So you can just be a close range fighter even with Conduit. So it's very versatile in that way. I just told you that your win condition is hold distance, but if you are insane at dash work and you hit your fireballs, nah, you can just play close range and it just doesn't matter because you just have more runes than them. And you can stun them too. So it's great. This is the class of freedom, choice. That's the same thing. It's of variety, of picking your playstyle. You could do many different things, which I think is one thing that differs it from other classes. I really wish it wasn't such a high damage class so that these other things could shine more. Because I said all that, but you can get away just running Focus Mana, Fervor, Recovery, and never using any of these mobility techs because your damage is just so high. But yeah. So if you're talking about picking between, still talking about, you know, your best runes, if we are talking about picking between Dash and Shadow Step, Dash allows for more movement, freedom. You know, you can thing about Dash is it's not just forward. Dash, you can dash and like keep curving. So there's like you can dash and like squiggle, like and I moved that entire time. If you go slow motion, you'll see that I was moving with my mouse. Like the dash it's omnidirectional movement. So if I hold A, it'll go to the right, but also it'll follow my mouse. If I'm making a S movement, my dash will make that S movement. I'm not the best at it, but there are people who can really make this show, and it's great. So you have more movement choice with dash, and the thing is, faster cooldown too. But the thing is, Shadow Step, you can just get some absolutely free damage because you're just invis, and they have no clue where you went. Up to 4 times in a row. And thing is, yeah, short cooldown, but Conduit has so many charges, so it's like, do you need that short cooldown? I don't know. You decide. I gave you the options. Okay? So, also the difference between, let's talk about teleports. And if you're asking me, I prefer Shadow Step, but only because there's a bug on the momentum right now, which makes it just go much farther than it used to. Once they nerf Shadow Step to its old distance, I will certainly be using dash more, because this cooldown is just far too high and doesn't give you too much compared to this. But if Shadow Step stays the same, then I would say Shadow Step is probably better. Yes. So the difference between flight and teleport, and the reason why I'm not even gonna lead you on, I'm gonna tell you straight up, use teleport over flight, is because teleport has no travel time, but flight just does. And I'm flying, I'm moving I'm not moving slowly per se, but I'm moving in a predictable, even if you're squiggling around, it's still like relatively slow, in terms of like switching directions. So it's very abusable with a Frost Gauntlet. A lot of Frost users, if you use flight, you're just going to be sniped a lot of the time. This is absolutely free. That's an absolutely free shot. So don't use flight, use teleport. It is an instant travel. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just use teleport. Yeah. Okay. So we are getting close to the end. Like we are pretty much done. Here's one more tech. Here's one tech that I threw in. This is not Conduit specific, but this is something that anyone who has made it this long deserves to know. So there is a tech in the game where you can close gaps, even if you don't have the runes or the mana to do so. The way you do this is by canceling your sorcery. So I'm pressing Q, I'm pressing right click, right? So I'm pressing sorcery, I'm pressing shoot my gauntlet, right? This is my gauntlet shoot button. This is my sorcery button. I'm holding sorcery, I'm shooting gauntlet. That cancels it, right? Okay, so what you can do is levitate, sorcery, cancel, levitate, sorcery, cancel, levitate, sorcery, cancel, levitate. You see, I would not have gotten that far on one mana bar. Let's try that without sorcery canceling. You see, and I didn't even do it as viable as I could have. I could have done it a lot faster. So what I'm doing here is I'm pressing sorcery, but I'm waiting for my mana to fully recharge before I hold my sorcery. Don't do the sorcery when you have no mana, because then you won't be able to levitate, obviously. So what's happening here is I am using my mana, stopping my downward momentum, levitating. Stopping my downward momentum, levitating. So that is letting me get higher and farther with my mana bar than I would if I had all that downward momentum. Because if I had downward momentum, obviously I'm hitting the ground way before I want to. I can't clear the gap. So just a final demonstration of how it should look. This is when you're doing it really quickly. Yeah, you gotta practice it. This is huge, Enlighten. There's someone in the chat. Yeah. So that's definitely huge. Sorcery canceling. So that is how you will close some distances. One thing about Conduit is if you used both of your sorceries, here's the thing, you might have a TP. You can actually sorcery cancel with a TP charge, which is kind of cool. Not many people know that. I do this all the time. Just sorcery with the rune, with the TP. It's kind of cool. For reference, you can only sorcery cancel 3 times before you hit the ground. So 1, 2, 3, and then this next one, it just won't let me. See, I had no downward momentum stop after that 3rd one. Also, you can only hold sorcery for 5 seconds. Yep. So there we go. Yeah, I'm heading out. Yeah, thank you for coming. Appreciate you, Enlighten, and that's actually a good time because we are just getting ready to wrap it up. So, take some time for final questions. If anyone wants to ask any final questions, that is okay. But yeah, this was certainly the experience. I really love talking about Conduit, so I'm really happy that I had this opportunity to do this. What hair product do I use and does it help with my gameplay? I just no. I use leave-in conditioner. All right, peace, bro. Thank you for coming. Yeah, so this was very fun. So thank you guys for coming out. Thank you for watching. If you watched this far, thank you for playing Spellbreak. This is a fantastic game, and I love to see how far it has come since I started playing in 2018. It is fantastic. Conduit didn't exist back then. I couldn't rune swap back then. There are so many things I could do now that I couldn't then. The game is just developing beautifully. The developers are doing their thing. They are embracing competitive. They're hosting tournaments now, which is fantastic. It is just so exciting to see how this game has been developing, and and it's gonna be cool to see where it goes. I know that this is just the beginning, and I can't wait to see like in 2 years, like what kind of content there is. But yeah, thank you for watching, guys. Yeah, so some plugs. There is an Element stream. Let's see, twitch.tv/Element. There's an Element stream in half an hour, so feel free to tune in. That's gonna be a tournament in half an hour. Pretty competitive. It's gonna be finals. It's actually sponsored by Proletariat, which is gonna be cool. We have finals. Yep. And yeah, join Element to take part in scrims and tournaments. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and have a good one. Hopefully you learned something.